Focus on big picture. Today's editorial page, 1 August 2025. Focus on big picture. Trump 25% tariff and penalty raise stakes for India. It also presents a moment to seize the initiative, do the right thing. US President Donald Trump announced of a 25% tariff on Indian imports, along with penalty for procuring energy and military equipment from Russia. It is a shocker at first sight, but it also represents a moment for India to seize the initiative and do what is right without losing any more time. A free trade agreement that allows greater access for Indian products to the world's largest market and, at the same time, opens up its economy to American goods and services is a win win for both sides. India's export to the US at $86.5 billion in 2024-25 April March were higher than those to any other country. Import from the US at $45.7 billion were below only those from China of $113.5 billion, Russia $63.8 billion, and the UAE $63.4 billion. A no deal, simply put, is not in India's interest. The effort should be not just preserve but enhance the gains from trade. Trump, no doubt, has overturned the predictable rules and principle governing the global trading order that delivered high growth and lifted the fortunes of millions across countries. His latest unilateral measures, subjecting India to a higher tariff than the UK, 10%, the European Union, Japan, and Korea, 15%, Indonesia, 19%, or Vietnam, 20%, runs counter to larger story of growing cooperation between the two countries. The last couple of years alone have been significant movement towards the signing of a new 10-year defense partnership framework, an MOU, to expand and diversify critical mineral supply chains, and proposed amendments to India's nuclear liability law. For all the jarring notes in Trump's imperious actions and pronouncements, India must not lose sight of the big picture. If anything, it must hasten the process of clinching a long delayed agreement that will also give a push to much needed domestic economic reforms. And the approach should be based on export proactiveness rather than import defensiveness, as was evident in the recent India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. While Trump 25% import levy may a pressure tactic for forcing India to lower both duties and non-tariff barriers on American products, is strengthening to impose an additional penalty for the country buying Russian oil and defense hardware is unacceptable, just as signing trade deal with the US is in India's interest. Securing the energy needs of its population, including by sourcing oil from any country offering crude at discounted price, is non-negotiable. It is possible this may entail a cost in the form of secondary sanctions like to Russian supplies, which India will have to factor in going ahead. Recognizing this cost is as important as converting the Trump threat to an opportunity to be seized. After sealing a deal with the European Union and Japan, agreeing to a 15% tariff in the case of these developed industrial economies, and even as he strings China along, United States President Donald Trump has shocked India. A low middle income developing economy imposing a 25% tariff. Till recently, the official Indian briefing to the media was that discussions were still on and India may get a couple of weeks reprieve in August to strike a deal. Hours after the Lok Sabha saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi unwilling to give any credit to President Trump for the pause in Operation Sindoor, the latter hit hard. Even after the PM and Foreign Minister's statement in Parliament, President Trump tweeted for the ninth time his claim that he had stopped the war. The nth time his claim that he had stopped the war. He had always linked that to trade. There is more to the Trump action than just trade and tariffs. Never since 1971, Has India found both the United States and China on the same side on a matter concerning Pakistan, while at the same time having to defend its relationship with Russia. This is perhaps the lowest point for Indian foreign policy, which has consequently endeavored for 3 decades to keep the US on the Indian side while having to deal with the China Pakistan alliance. Parliament must undertake a comprehensive review of Indian foreign policy. India is now stuck in a catch 22. Damned if he will, damned if he won't. Prime Minister Modi will not admit that US intervention played a role. If the issue was only about how the war ended, the matter would have rested there. After all, even in the past, the US did play a role in sorting out issues behind India and Pakistan, even with even with India consequently maintaining that all disputes between neighbors can only be settled bilaterally. No US president has made a big deal of it in the past. This time it's different. Not only has President Trump made a big deal of his intervention, explicitly seeking credit for it, he has gone a step further and linked this to the outcome of trade and tariff negotiation. While the European Union and Japan are relatively happy with the outcome of tariff negotiation, making promises on investment, and China is working its way through Washington D.C.'s US-India trade relations, anchored in democratic value and strategic convergence, have entered a more challenging phase. The recent imposition of 25% plus tariffs on India exports by the US adds stress to trade negotiation. The core of the dispute lies not just in tariffs or market access. While India's prudent refusal to open its agricultural and dairy markets remains a sticking point for Washington, deeper unease stems for India energy and defense ties with Russia. India expanded its crude oil imports from Russia from around 2% of total imports in financial year 2022 to 36% in financial year 2025, largely due to wartime discount. With those discounts now shrinking, India has fresh room to diversify its sources, including LNG and crude from the US, potentially turning friction into an opportunity. The impact of tariffs cannot be ignored. India exports to the US constitute just over 2% of GDP, but their composition matters. Sectors such as textile, chemicals, pharmaceutical, and auto components will face the brunt. The tariff shock could cost India up to $30 billion in export earnings, affecting supply chains, employment, and GDP momentum in the short term. Yet, India's economic structure, rooted in strong domestic compositions, offers it a cushion. Still, the broader global environment remains volatile. A slowdown in emerging markets, ongoing capital flows, and rise and despite near-term volatility, India's market fundamentals remain sound. Key drivers such as financial services, consumer goods, and technology are relatively insulated from trade tensions. However, short-term market volatility is inevitable, driven by high valuations and policy uncertainty. Sectors like auto components could ever gain as US tariffs on Chinese and Mexican parts create demand for alternatives.